Part 2, Supplementary Chronicle. Chapter 6, Remedy Precedes Illness. I, Shmuel, the oldest son of Rabbi Yom Tov Lipmann Heller, want to write the account of how my father's enemies informed against him. In addition, I am taking on the additional task of recording my own involvement in this entire affair, elaborating on several remarkable incidents which my father chose to omit entirely or mention only in passing. He did so mainly because of his great humility, and also since he did not wish to embarrass certain prominent personalities who were still alive at the time. Because of these omissions, my father's chronicle is actually incomplete. Now that my father has passed away, my situation reminded me of that of King Solomon, who avenged his father David after the latter's death, and I reflected that I certainly should not be more righteous than King Solomon. Therefore, I decided to write a brief but detailed account, naming the people who attacked and disgraced my father, and who thereby did serious damage to the cause of Austrian Jewry. My aim is to demonstrate the harmful effects of quarreling and the numerous sins that resulted from it, in the hope that people may learn to avoid strife and divisiveness at all costs. It was in the year 1625, when my father was still the rabbi of Vienna, that I entered the yeshiva of Metz, France, which was headed by Rabbi Mordechai Luria, formerly the rabbi of Worms, then France. I studied there for more than 4 years until 1629, becoming well versed in the entire Talmud. On Rosh Chodesh Sivan of that year, my father wrote me a letter asking me to come home. By that time, he had become the chief rabbi of Prague, enjoying prestige and affluence. Although I had the means to travel by coach, I made my way from Metz to Prague in the style of all yeshiva students of the time, rich and poor alike, who during intercession would wander about the countryside, knapsack on their back and cane in their hand. Joyfully, they would hike from town to town, laughing and singing happy songs, knowing that they would receive a warm welcome in every Jewish community on their way. There existed a wonderful camaraderie among the students, the wealthy helping the poor ones. I was considered one of the wealthy ones, since my parents sent me 1,000 florins every month. On my long march home, I was accompanied by 5 fellow students. We were a group of happy wayfarers hiking along the country roads. My exhilaration mounted at the prospect of being reunited with my family. Soon I would be able to show my father how much I had advanced in my studies. However, while I was musing happy thoughts, my father's house was plunged into darkness and despair. Such is human nature. We rejoice in the illusions of a futile mirage, and only when disaster strikes do we come to our senses. And so it happened. When I arrived well pleased in Vienna on my way to Prague, not realizing that at that very moment my father was incarcerated in the most dreadful prison in that city, about to be sentenced to death. But Hashem in his mysterious ways prepares the remedy before inflicting the illness. In his mercy, he guided events in a wondrous way, so that my father might be saved. Before entering Vienna, I lay down in a sunny pasture close to a park where in the springtime the Viennese aristocracy would go for outings and relaxation. Just then, the park was deserted since a parade was underway in the city. Placing my knapsack under my head, I lay there daydreaming, when suddenly my musings were interrupted by loud shrieking voices coming from behind. "Help! Help us! Save us!" Jumping to my feet, I saw a ferocious bull madly charging at a young noblewoman and a nursemaid carrying a small boy. Eyes bulging, snorting, and bellowing, the raging bull was no more than 10 yards away from the terrified women who were running for their lives. The bull obviously had been provoked by the nursemaid's red scarf. Within a split second, I ran over to the nursemaid, tore off her scarf, and threw it in front of the crazed animal. The bull lunged at it, shredding the red cloth with its powerful horns, allowing the women to find shelter behind a large tree. At that moment, the lady's husband, dressed in an elegant uniform adorned with a bemedaled silk sash, pulled up in a coach. Excitedly, the woman told him what had happened and introduced me as the man who saved them. It turned out that the gentleman was the French ambassador and did not speak German. Addressing me in French, he asked, "Please tell me who you are." "I am a Jew, the son of a prominent rabbi," I replied in French. "For the past 4 years, I have been studying at the Talmudic Academy in Metz, and that is where I learned how to speak French. The ambassador invited me to his home, offering me money. I thanked him, but declined to accept it. 'Please tell me, how can I repay your favor?' the ambassador then asked me. 'Sir, I will feel richly rewarded if you think well of the Jewish people,' I replied, 'and will remember that we are kind to people without expecting a reward.' 'Let me assure you,' said the ambassador, 'that I will always be a friend of the Jews. Now, since the Jews in this country are being persecuted, if ever the occasion arises that you need help in dealing with government officials, do not hesitate to call on me. As the French ambassador, I have a great deal of influence, and I promise I will help you just as you helped me.' He gave me his address, thanking me profusely. 'Too bad you are Jewish,' his wife added. 'Otherwise, we really could have helped you along in your career,' because Jews weren't allowed to be government officials. They left to watch the parade, and I took my knapsack and proceeded to the Jewish quarter. By the time I got there, it was dark already, so that no one recognized me. I decided to go straight to the house of my uncle, Reb Baruch Zatruner. When the family realized who I was, they had not seen me in more than 10 years, there was a great commotion. My aunt ran into the hall, bursting into tears, whereupon my uncle began to cry, while my cousins, their eyes downcast, were whispering to each other. My uncle broke the news to me. Weeping profusely, he told me all that had transpired. Words cannot describe the turmoil that raged inside me when I heard the bad tidings. My entire world had suddenly collapsed. My hopes were dashed, my dreams shattered. Feeling faint, I sat down, and even after drinking a glass of wine or two, I did not recover for 1 full hour. We sat up all that night, bemoaning my father's bitter fate. Since I was in the dark as to the reasons for his imprisonment, I did not know what steps to take to extricate him. I told my relatives about my acquaintance with the French ambassador, but explained that I could not approach him unless I knew the nature of the charges against him. I concluded that I must see my father to confirm that he was indeed innocent of any wrongdoing. Then I would do all I could to gain his freedom.